Hungary's position under Orban, a path diverging from the EU. Hungary, under Prime Minister Viktor Orban, has taken an increasingly defiant stance against the European Union, which it sees as dominated by politically correct agendas and a technocratic elite. This tension has particularly intensified with EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen's policies, which Hungary views as more aligned with globalist interests, what some critics label as a cabal, than with the sovereign interests of individual member states. Orban's leadership represents a clear rejection of what he perceives as Brussels' overreach, and his rhetoric and policies are pushing Hungary toward alternative alliances, perhaps even heralding its exit from the European Union and NATO. This essay will explore these ideas through historical analysis, highlighting Orban's defiance, Hungary's relationship with the EU, and the potential consequences of Hungary's realignment towards BRICS and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SCO. Orban's Hungary, a contrarian within the EU. Viktor Orban has ruled Hungary with a nationalist and conservative agenda since 2010, creating friction between Budapest and Brussels on numerous fronts. His opposition to EU-mandated immigration quotas and the Bloc's progressive stance on social issues has placed him in direct conflict with the European leadership. Orban's rejection of politically correct ideologies aligns with his broader critique of liberal globalism, which he believes is undermining European culture, national sovereignty, and traditional values. He has frequently framed Brussels as an authoritarian entity, accusing it of using penalties and sanctions as tools to force member states into submission. Orban's government has, on multiple occasions, been penalized by the European Union, particularly over issues related to rule of law, media freedom, and judiciary independence. For example, in 2020, Hungary faced Article 7 proceedings, a rarely used legal mechanism that could theoretically strip a member state of voting rights within the EU. Hungary, alongside Poland, has also been threatened with financial penalties from the EU, including the withholding of funds over perceived breaches of democratic norms. These penalties, however, have not weakened Orban's resolve. If anything, they have fueled his defiance and criticism of the EU as an organization infringing on Hungary's right to self-determination. The prospect of Hungary leaving the EU. As tensions rise, the possibility of Hungary leaving the European Union is becoming a topic of serious speculation. Orban has already shown a readiness to resist EU penalties and align with alternative powers that share Hungary's vision of sovereignty and non-interference in internal affairs. Hungary's cultural, political, and economic drift away from the EU suggests that an eventual exit could be possible if Brussels continues to press Hungary with penalties and demands that clash with Orban's nationalist agenda. Leaving the EU would have significant ramifications for Hungary and Europe. Economically, Hungary has benefited from EU membership, receiving substantial financial aid and investment since joining the Bloc in 2004. However, Orban might calculate that closer ties with emerging powers such as Russia, China, and other BRICS nations could offer alternative pathways for economic security and political autonomy. The rhetoric in Budapest increasingly suggests that Hungary could pivot toward a multipolar world order where cooperation with the East might be more beneficial than continued subordination to Brussels' demands. Hungary's potential alignment with BRICS and the SCO. If Hungary were to leave the European Union, a likely trajectory could involve forging stronger alliances with non-Western powers, particularly through the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, SCO. Both organizations have been positioning themselves as counterweights to Western economic and political dominance, and they align with Hungary's focus on sovereignty and multipolar diplomacy. Hungary's potential alignment with BRICS could be a logical step, especially considering the strengthening of economic ties between Hungary and Russia in recent years. Orban has maintained a pragmatic relationship with Russian President Vladimir Putin, even as other EU leaders have distanced themselves from Moscow due to geopolitical conflicts like the Ukraine crisis. Hungary's dependence on Russian energy and its refusal to fully participate in EU sanctions against Russia illustrate its divergence from the EU's foreign policy direction. Similarly, Hungary could find a strategic alignment within the SCO, which includes China and Russia as its key members. The SCO promotes security, economic, and cultural cooperation in Eurasia, a region where Hungary could increase its influence. As Turkey, another NATO member with contentious relations with the EU, also signals its interest in BRICS and the SCO. The potential for Hungary to follow a similar path grows stronger. Hungary and Turkey, could they leave NATO? Another question that arises in this context is whether Hungary, like Turkey, might also consider exiting NATO. Both Hungary and Turkey have shown a desire to exercise independent foreign policies that do not necessarily align with Western expectations. Turkey has increasingly asserted its autonomy, developing defense projects outside of NATO frameworks, purchasing weapons from Russia, and deepening its involvement in organizations like the SCO. Hungary could similarly distance itself from NATO if its foreign policy continues to emphasize sovereignty and non-intervention. NATO membership has traditionally provided Hungary with security guarantees, particularly against perceived threats from Russia, but Orban's administration appears less focused on antagonizing Russia and more interested in securing beneficial relationships with Eastern powers. If NATO pushes Hungary too hard, or if the alliance becomes a symbol of Western dominance that Orban rejects, Hungary could feasibly leave NATO, particularly if it finds stronger security arrangements within other international alliances. Conclusion: Hungary's potential future outside the Western Bloc. Viktor Orban's leadership represents a clear rejection of the politically correct, globalist agenda that he believes dominates the European Union. His administration's defiance of EU penalties and its increasingly autonomous foreign policy suggest that Hungary could be the first major member state to leave the European Union if tensions continue to escalate. As Orban strengthens ties with non-Western powers and aligns more closely with the BRICS and the SCO, Hungary's future may lie outside the Western Bloc entirely. Should Hungary follow this path, it may join Turkey in redefining its role within NATO, or even leaving the alliance altogether. This would mark a significant shift in the geopolitical landscape, indicating the rise of alternative alliances and a break from the post-Cold War order. Whether these moves would benefit Hungary in the long term remains uncertain, but what is clear is that Orban's Hungary is no longer content to play by Brussels rules and is actively seeking a future based on national sovereignty, independent foreign policy, and strategic realignment.